So thanks everyone for joining. You guys all know me by now. This is David Jakubowski, head of ad tech at Facebook. And David and I were talking and we realized that we're really the only thing that sits between you and a drink. And we made a promise to each other. We made a promise to each other many years ago when we were working together that we would never stand in the way between friends and a drink. So we're going to get things started right now by passing out some beers. And you guys can enjoy a drink and enjoy some conversation. And don't forget us up here. Sure.
Yeah.
So again, welcome everybody to the last part of the day, the Fireside Chat with David, head of ad tech at Facebook. So Dave, why don't you kind of start us off by telling us a little bit about your background, some of the companies you've worked with, some of the leadership positions you've had in ad technology, and kind of what brought you to Facebook.
Sure. So I've been working in ad tech. I don't think I've ever done anything except ad tech. In fact, been doing it so long it wasn't called ad tech when I started doing it. Anybody remember Juno? Yeah, okay. Some people as old as I am. Sorry about that. So I started back at Juno when you had to build your own ad server to serve an ad. There was no third-party ecosystem to support any of this. So started back then, worked with you at Quigo. From there, built Ad Center with Microsoft. That's the monetization engine behind Bing. And then from there, I really learned a lot about the bottom of the purchase funnel and how marketers were valuing the leads and the sales that they were generating, very specifically around search. And I inherited a product team around the display products, and I was sort of sifting through the data and the results and the impact it was having, and I was like, God, this stuff is awful. Like, why would anybody buy this? And there's this kind of stream of data that was flowing with it, and I was like, well, why can't you just turn that into, why can't you take that data and turn it into a targeting thing like a keyword, and really improve the performance of this stuff? This is a long time ago. And so that was kind of the impetus for an idea for a company that becomes Aggregate Knowledge. That was an analytics company that I see we have some Neustar sponsorship here that Neustar acquired a couple of years ago. I was at Facebook one afternoon. We had Neustar has a big partnership with Facebook, and I was talking to Brian Boland and David Fisher, just kind of comparing notes about ad tech, and they said, hey, we're really thinking about getting into this, and here's some of our thoughts. What do you think? And we kind of bantered them around a little bit, and they said, do you want to do it? And I was kind of thinking, I wasn't really thinking about, kind of what I was going to do next, and I kind of was like looking around going, I think I do. And so the opportunity to go really create choice in the marketplace against Google, who is kind of running on a technology that was a decade old that really wasn't addressing the needs of hard measurement, of fraud prevention, of mobile at all, and to take the digital space into kind of a more scientific measurement based approach to drive real results for marketers was just incredibly appealing. And so here I sit, pretty lucky.
Awesome. For someone that's been in ad tech before it was called ad tech, most of your professional career, we all have ideas of what Facebook's like on the inside, and a lot of them are probably wrong. What was the biggest surprise to you coming on board there and being part of leadership, and what did you learn?
So I think that the biggest surprise to me is how strong management actually is. You kind of have this perspective of move fast, break things on the outside, and this perspective that it's this kind of organized chaos. There's a little bit of truth to that, but it's very organized and it's very purposeful. We believe in small teams, very empowered decision making throughout the organization. We think of it a little bit more like most companies are a pyramid. You have a small leadership team and a lot of folks that work under it. We're kind of the inverse of that. We have a strong, empowered decision-making workforce and a small number of people whose jobs it is to move obstacles out of their way. And so I'll point to Sheryl Sandberg as a prime example. She's very well known in the industry, both as an executive and as an author. And I've been very fortunate to work pretty closely with her. And just her work ethic and how hard she works and how much time she spends and the care and feeding she puts into her people to create space for them to actually go make the day-to-day decisions around the products is actually inspiring. And when we launched Atlas, I got to spend almost a pretty solid week, around with her. And man, she outworked me 2-to-1. And I was like, I gotta get my act together. She doesn't have to do this. And so the management team is really inspiring to work for.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us in her tremendous loss have got to read some of her posts, and I think we're all feel a little inspired by Sheryl. So that really resonates. You moved your family kind of throughout this transition of your career at the Aggregate Knowledge days from New York to Silicon Valley, and most of us here are East Coasters. I think there's a few folks from the West Coast, but what are the differences in running a tech company, in New York versus Silicon Valley? That's part A, and then anticipating some of those answers. Can we catch up? Is there too big a gap? Yeah.
Sure. So, look, hiring is hard in both places. The Silicon Valley, it's not like there's just people running around saying, hire me, I'm the best engineer in the world at every Starbucks. There's a few of those, but hiring is hard everywhere. The big difference is that there's a lot more engineers in Silicon Valley to kind of go pull from, but there's also a lot less business people. So it's kind of flipped on what the strengths and the weaknesses are. And what I will say is that Silicon Valley, there's a lot more business people who've kind of come in to Silicon Valley, and I'm involved in a number of companies here in New York as partners, as clients, and I'm watching the engineering pool and the talent base here in New York really grow. And so, the mobile connected world has shrunk a lot of the geography, and you're really seeing that, and there's some amazing tech coming out of New York, as much as there is in Silicon Valley. We have a big engineering group here. A bunch of our ad tech stuff is here. We've also expanded to London. We're watching that become a real tech hotbed. We're watching this connected world and this data-driven world really shrink geography.
Okay, great. So let's change gears a little bit and talk about some of the conversations you have when you're out meeting with advertisers about Atlas and about the opportunities on the Facebook platform itself. You spend a lot of your time meeting with Fortune 500 CMOs. What kind of trends are you seeing emerge? What's the most frequently asked question that you hear from CMOs?
Yeah, the most common question is, how do I make the transition to mobile? Right, that's the number one question that we get from everybody. It's, while we as an industry were kind of talking about when is the year of mobile going to happen, the consumer said, the hell with you, it's now. In fact, it was 2 years ago. So the CMOs that I meet with are all like, I'm watching my consumer move to this device. In 2014, mobile devices did something that for the past 2 decades of the internet it was never able to do, and that's overtake television for time spent. Right? It's the fastest adoption of a mass communication technology the world has ever seen, ever in history. Right? Think about the last time an incumbent media thing was overtaken. It happened in the late 1950s when television overtook radio for the dominant media channel. Right? Mobile in 3 short years did that to television. That's incredible. And so I think historically, and I think, look what happened in television after television overtook radio. If you would have asked somebody back then, fortunately I wasn't alive, if you ask somebody, what's going to happen? Who are going to be the big winners and the big losers? You'd say, music's in trouble, right? Well, TV brought music into arguably its heyday in MTV and videos and with record profits and sales. And so it literally redefined how we do everything. And there was a winner and a loser in every category. I think about Procter & Gamble, right? What the heck does TV have to do with consumer packaged goods? Well, they basically invented the soap opera, right? They brought these stories from radio onto television and gave them a life because they needed to get to an audience on the other side of that. And so I like to look at history for kind of some of these things.
I liked how you brought us back to a time when they actually had music on MTV. So
Yeah.
if anyone remembers that, but that was a real thing.
Yeah.
You could hear new music on MTV. That was great. And speaking of mobile, I mean, Facebook's probably executed on the mobile first strategy better than any other company in a short period of time, right? You've got 780 million daily active users on mobile of your total 940 mobile or daily active users. Is mobile changing? You talk about how it's changing businesses with Uber. Is it changing consumer behavior at all? Are consumers acting differently?
Oh, yeah. Where you research, how you research. In fact, we're seeing on Atlas, 4 out of every 10 purchases in the last study, and I anticipate that this number will do nothing but go up. 4 out of every 10 purchases start with an activity on the phone and end on the desktop, right? Just think of all the commerce that happens. You're talking 40% of them started someplace on a mobile device, and they cross over because that buying experience is actually easier still on the desktop. Take a look at how many people see the little stupid banners at the bottom of your mobile web and mobile apps, those little things, and they're cut off and truncated. As kind of somebody who worked in the industry my whole life, that's embarrassing. Those are awful, right? All of those things have to change and get more integrated. And when they do, and you create more native experiences inside of the apps, we're watching conversions jump 700%, 7x better when you figure out a native. My algorithm got 10% better. Like, that's just a fundamental paradigm shift because of how the consumer wants it. And I look to my kids for this stuff. So I have 2 little kids, and every TV in my house has 4 paw prints that go like this across every screen in my house. And my little one says, "This one's broken, Dad," right? And I'm like, and it's hilarious to look at. And when they want information, they know how to use Siri, they know how to use a browser, they know how to use their iPads, and they know how to use the voice commands on them because my 5-year-old can't type or spell. And although he's getting pretty good now. But he, as a 4-year-old, couldn't do those kinds of things. But he knows how to ask it questions, and if he doesn't get the response he's expecting, he thinks it's wrong, right? It's broken. It doesn't work right. And so there's a whole generation of kids who are going to become our consumers who expect this immediacy.
Oh, it's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about compliance and brand safety. Not too much, but just a little bit. So for most of us at Performline and the folks in the audience, right, we talk about compliance around regulatory rules, around truth in advertising laws, right? And brand safety at a high level means the alignment of your brand next to approved content or non-approved content. How does, when you hear compliance being spoken of internally in Facebook, I imagine the issues are a little different.
Yep.
What are the concerns there, right? We've heard some things in the press recently. Why don't you kind of share with us a little bit about?
Yes, I'll break it into 2 buckets. Okay. So one is kind of, we sometimes refer to it as the big blue app, kind of the Facebook O&O property that is the Facebook application that we use. And then there's kind of the things that we do off of Facebook, which is why I spend most of my time on the ad tech side of what it is that we do with Atlas, LiveRail, the Audience Network, things like that. And so if we just keep it simple and break it into those 2 buckets, there's a lot of time spent making sure that things like hate speech don't penetrate the application. and that stuff is not allowed to persist. And so we have the real name policy, for example, so that if you're going to say something, you got to put your name on it, and that is a good kind of natural filter. And then there is technology that makes sure that these things aren't doing it, and then there's teams. In fact, there's a team. One of the most fascinating things that I got to be a part of was a team that was reviewing some of the hate speech going on with some of the conflicts going on in the Middle East. And it was a group of Israeli and Palestinian editors kind of trying to create lines on what is hate speech. And I got a lot of hope for kind of where the future is going, because the collaboration that the teams put around these things and the basic human care and elements that they put in place were really inspiring. And you look at it and you go, we can figure out speech, can't we figure the rest of it out? And I watched these teams work together, and it was really inspiring. And I'm by no means the compliance expert inside of Facebook. It's not my domain. But outside of Facebook, off Facebook, we have a lot of brands coming to us and saying, can you help us understand fraud? Can you help us understand where there are people behind these machines? And the short answer is, absolutely, we can help them. And that's one of the things that needs to get fixed in the ecosystem. People talk about cookies, and people talk about mobile. And so this device proliferation, this browser proliferation, has made it really easy to manufacture inventory. And as folks like you guys in this room, we're all in the business of generating real business results. We want to do a good job. We want to put compelling, personalized offers in front of people that they actually want. We want real people to convert on them. And unfortunately, there's a whole world out there of people who are fabricating inventory to places that human beings could never get. And so one of the things that we're doing with Atlas, for example, as a platform, is you get an actual real people report, and it counts how many cookies that you ran an ad to, and then how many actual people were behind it. And so we're able to bring some of those solutions out. And I was flabbergasted. Reach, if you do it by cookie counts, is overstated on average by 58%. That's not another 2, 3, 4, 5% number. 58%. So
now, is that all fraud? That gap?
It's not all fraud. A lot of it is double counting.
Okay.
So you see, so you have a phone.
Yep.
You have an iPad or some equivalent.
Yep.
Laptop.
Desktop. Yep.
Yep. So just that alone is going to make you look like 3 people.
Okay.
And we didn't even begin to get started on the rest of the connected devices. You probably touched to a watch or whatever the thing is. So you get counted, and so you end up with frequency where you're hitting somebody 141% more than you think you are, right? And so you've set some frequency cap of 10 for a week on something you're trying to run an ad for, and you end up hitting that person over the head 24 times, right? So these are the kinds of problems that marketers are trying to solve. And some of it, there's fraud in there. There's lots of bots, and there's spoofing, and there's all kinds of things going on. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is really simple as marketers. We want to run an ad to a real person, and then we want to measure the results down at the bottom of that funnel. How many things do we actually sell? And then we want to keep iterating on that to get better at our jobs. So that's where we spend a lot of our time on off Facebook.
So you mentioned Atlas, and you started to tell us a little bit about why cookie-based attribution not so good, right?
Yep.
And that was kind of the big headlines with the Atlas relaunch in September, right? Which you were behind that project. People-based measurement, right, and cross-device targeting.
Yep.
Why are those a big deal? So sounds like one reason is because you can get rid of a lot of waste.
Yep.
Right, and you're not double paying for the same people.
Yep.
Cross-device.
In marketing terms, we call that a reinvestment opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what about are cookies limited on the mobile phone? Do they work mobile?
They don't work at all.
They don't work at all.
They don't work at all. You have mobile web, and if you're on Safari, those are automatically deleted every time you close out. So the cookie, and Chrome has some, and then apps are none, right? So it really doesn't address the number one consumption channel by consumers, like at all. And the technology that we've had for the last decade, there was no incentive for anybody to innovate because it was kind of a winner take all. In any marketplace, one winner is the only bad outcome, right? And so having choice in the marketplace for marketers' code is already causing innovation in the industry, and you're watching people starting to talk more about people-based marketing. You're watching publishers start to come out and saying, I have real people and I can prove it. You're watching advertisers saying, I only want to pay when you run it to real people, and I want to measure the effectiveness of that. You're watching a growth in the compliance set, especially around EDU, mortgages. You're watching people say, no, I have a higher bar. I want to make sure that this is legitimate, and I'm willing to pay for it.
Yeah. And what about connecting online ads, mobile or otherwise, to offline sales? Is that aspirational? Is that starting to take place? Like,
that's real right now, right today. We have customers doing it.
All right. Is there a case study, either generic or otherwise, that you could share with
So
us?
our first case studies are going to come out at Con, so I can't. My team will kill me if I start screwing up our release of the case studies. So we launched Atlas in October. We actually had spent 6 months migrating everybody off the old technology onto the new technology. So we completed that at the end of March, and then starting in March, as we got all those people on, we started to map to the case studies of the comparisons of people to cookie. I talked to some of those statistics earlier. I will say in one case study you're going to see, we found that 2/3, just the nature of this business, 2/3 of the conversions that they were getting weren't getting attributed to anything, right, upstream, and they turned out to all be mobile devices, right? It was just a zero, just blank in their attribution methodology. So the good news, as marketers, we get beat up for our results quite a bit. The good news is you're doing better than you think you are. You just can't see it, and your boss probably doesn't care until you can show it to him. So there's measurement alternatives coming so that you can prove the good work that you are doing, because this stuff actually really works.
Wow. Cool. So thinking about how we take that and we give everybody something actionable, maybe to take back to their teams, their social teams, or their digital media teams. Are there any nuggets, kind of unknown secrets, or things that marketers should try that they may not be trying right now to acquire customers on the Facebook platform?
On
or
Facebook
Atlas?
specifically?
No, either through Atlas, right, or on Facebook specifically.
The answers, there's two answers to the question. They're different.
Okay.
If you think about Facebook, Facebook very quietly launched a thing called the Audience Network. Anybody heard of the Facebook Audience Network? Okay, a few people. So the Facebook Audience Network takes all the real people-based targeting that made the newsfeed so powerful, and it's now taking that out, working with other apps. But it only takes inventory that is a known person, right? So there's nothing that runs through it that's not an actual physical human being. And we haven't put a whole lot of the muscle in the marketing machine behind it yet. So the auction that is inside of it is actually quite light. And so it's the best priced thing out there right now. So if you're not opting into the Facebook Audience Network, you're missing out on some very some cheap inventory that you can get. And inside of the auction, there's a quality score to the algorithm, so that it tries to keep a conversion rate at par with feed. So it's a very, very high quality network that just doesn't have a lot of the density of bids in it yet. So hopefully that won't last too long. But
So that's
an opportunity right now.
You just helped everybody pay for their trip to New York.
There you go.
Thank you for that.
There you go. So I think that's the biggest one there. And then off, you had asked the question earlier about marketers and what the number one question is.
With CMOs, what are they asking?
Yeah, well, the mobile question is the one they answer. I didn't give you the answer.
What is it?
Yeah. So most of us grew up with that textbook that had the 4 Ps of marketing. Does everybody remember that? Product placement, promotion. Okay, there we go. Somebody read that book. And so we all kind of had that. And the landscape is changing. The 4 Ps are changing to what I'm kind of calling the 4 Cs, right? And that is choice, right? Think about what made Amazon Amazon. It was one place that you could go to and have all choice. It wasn't one product anymore. It was all the products, right, that you could see. And so product changed to choice. And then price. Price isn't the #1 driver of everything anymore. Convenience has played had an undue impact on people's selection today. So look at Uber's not the cheapest way to get around at all, right? In fact, if you know anything about surge pricing, it's not cheap at all. But it's so damn convenient, right? And so the convenience of the immediacy of the purchase, and if you just spend a weekend thinking about your own consumption patterns, about how small your patience is when you're going to acquire something now versus what it was 5 or 10 years ago, and now think about every single one of your customers and how that's impacting it, right? And then placement, it used to be all about where you put it on the shelf, what store it was in, and now it's about cross-device. The consumer has moved from, look at end caps. End caps used to be this massive thing. Next time you're in the grocery store, walk by the end caps. They're very different today because what is everybody doing, right? They don't have the same impact, and so it's cross-device. One of my favorite statistics, chewing gum. Chewing gum sales are down 11%. Who the hell cares about that? Sweets as a category is up 14%, right? So if you're a brand manager in chewing gum, if that's your job, you're 25% in the wrong direction, right? What's going on? Well, again, when you're at the grocery store, take a look at what people are doing. They're not looking at the gum rack. They're doing this, right? So that's had a massive impact. And I don't think Steve Jobs, I don't know this, but I don't think Steve Jobs got up in the morning one day and said, let's change chewing gum sales, right? Right? This device is impacting kind of all of those things. And so this cross-device impact, you have to think about where is my consumer and how is their experience impacted? Because some of the products that we sell don't have simple conversion funnels, right? They're multi-stepped, and sometimes that doesn't always play well inside of, in particular, mobile web. In fact, mobile web is often kind of wonky, and then app distribution can be difficult. So what is the path that you're using that mobile device for, and how are you incenting people to drive to the place that they can complete that lead form, complete whatever that thing is that you want them to do. And then last one, promotion, has changed to creative sequencing. So what is the journey and the story that you're bringing them on so that they're aware of how to move through your purchase cycle? And so the 4 Ps are really changing to the 4 Cs, and we're starting to package up and do lots of education with the CMOs of some of our biggest customers around that.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, thank you. We got a few minutes left, and what I want to do is I want to end with open questions from the audience. I'm sure.
You said no topic is, okay. I have a millennial, and I remember when she got onto Facebook, and I had to have my account too to monitor her and all of that. Well, they're now like moving away from Facebook, using more Twitter, Instagram. What are you doing to get that audience back?
So a couple things. So one, Instagram is in the Facebook family of apps and services. So we bought Instagram. So that was
Problem solved.
so there's that.
Any other curveballs?
But I'd also like to take a minute to address the meme that the millennials are moving off Facebook. we actually found that it still ranks number 1 in terms of penetration across them all. And if you look at kind of the rank of the apps, and we came out with a bunch of data around this. I don't have it off the top of my head, but if anybody wants to follow up, Tim is here. Where's Tim? Tim, we could take and get people the statistics because I don't want to get myself fired for handing out wrong numbers. But we have a whole bunch of data around what they're using and how they're doing it. What we are finding is that kids use lots of apps. And so if you look at time spent overall, Facebook still does really, really well, but kids are spreading out their time and they're good at these devices. It's kind of like, when I was real little, there were, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then at some point in there we got cable, and then we went to 50 channels. That was really cool. And so I was definitely the first person in my house to figure out how to use the old orange cable box with the little switches and the big buttons. Like I could maneuver that thing really, really quickly. And so you're just seeing kids who grow up with these technologies. Shoot.
So I know that Facebook video on Facebook is really taken off.
Yep.
Right? So to the point where you may overtake YouTube, something like 4 billion videos viewed daily.
It's the exact number. You're good at this.
Look at that. So just in terms of an open question on behalf of the whole audience, how should the audience be thinking about Facebook video, and is that a good tool to extend brand on?
Well, there's 50 years of television that says yes. I think it's about formats and impact, right? Static image says 1,000 words. How many does a moving picture say, right? If there are 1,000 frames in that, it must say a lot of words. So moving picture formats have more impact, period. We know that. Look at kids, look at consumption, look at what people are doing. Our video product went to 4 billion a day very, very rapidly because it's engaging. And that's true of all video format. So from a brand perspective, it's really hard to compete with motion and sound. It's just such an impactful medium. And in fact, I was with John Wren, who's the CEO of Omnicom. And John's an amazing guy. He's been the CEO of Omnicom, it feels like forever. And he's in his 70s. And somebody asked him, they said, hey, GRPs on TV are down. Is TV dying? And he said, not at all. He said, GRPs on the TV are down, but nobody's watching any less television. They're just doing it on a device, right? And so that medium is just moving where we consume it, and that's shifting. And there was actually, I was recently reading an article that said the average distance that we watch television is something like 13 or 15 feet, which is about the same ratio as if you anybody have a phone on them? Just hold it up.
Everybody.
Now look at it like you were watching something, right? Now that size screen versus the average size television 15 feet away, it's about the same ratio. And so when you watch what people are doing, there's, sight, sound, and motion is powerful.
Well, thank you, Dave. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you.